Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. I love oils for weathering my miniatures, and I love a ready mixed oil because I'm lazy and it saves me lots of time. And Knott's Hobbies have sent me some of their new oils to try out. So let's take a look.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description. Knott's Hobbies is a relatively new, small UK startup business, at least in terms of the hobby sphere. And a little while ago, I reviewed their dry brushes, their dry palette, their sponges, their soap, and the weathering sponge tool that they had as well. Did a short video on it, and I'll pop a link in the video description for those of you who would like to go back and watch that one. Now, relatively competitive prices compared to the other things like that on the market, and they're pretty good. I still use the dry brushes today. It's a relatively small range of brushes. I'd like to see that grow a little bit more, but I use them in and amongst all of the other dry brushes and things I use, and I absolutely love the sponge holding tool. And again, I know other people make them, but I really love their dense sponges as well, and I will cover those a little bit in this video. So they're launching some new things. The weathering sponges are continuing, but they're adding just some basic sponges as well as the more dense ones. But again, we'll come back to that towards the end of the video. And then these are the new things: a grime wash, a rust wash, and a verdigris. And these are all ready mixed oil washes. And we're going to sort of test them out one by one, and I'll talk you through my feelings around oil washes. Now, I am a fan of oil washes. I will say that right off the bat. If you haven't used them before, you have to treat them slightly different to standard washes. You need a good shake because the oil separates from the thinner that's mixed in to them. You can mix your own oil washes, getting artist oil paints and artist white spirit or thinner or Sansador. But I really like the ready mix ones as well, because I just like stuff ready to use at the pot that's consistent colour each time. And the ones I use at the moment are from Scale Colour, Scale 75, and I use them in loads of my videos. If you're a regular viewer, you'll hear me talking about grease, which is one of my favourite colours there. So this is the grime colour, which is a kind of a dirty green colour, and I really like it. Actually, it works very much like one of the oil washes from the Scale 75 range. So my early sort of using it here, and my only sort of reaction to it is it pretty much works the same way. It runs into the recesses really, really nicely. It's different to a standard wash. If you're used to Games Workshop washes, they tend to stick on the surface a lot more. These run into the recesses. They're really good for pin washing, really good for adding effects, and when they dry, they have a slightly different effect to a standard wash. You're not kind of filtering over the whole model quite as much. It ends up in the recesses more, looks more like dirt and grime, hence them being marketed as weathering tools so often. In terms of this colour, the grime colour, I quite like it. The green that I have through Scale 75 is much, much brighter, and I don't tend to use it very much. I'm sure it does have its uses, but I don't find them very, very often. I find it a little bit too vibrant, and that's just down to my style and what you need. We all use different colours, but I quite like this, and I quite like using greens when I weather things. And you'll notice when I paint wood a lot, I tend to add green to the colourings on that as well. Again, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, that is. So this is useful. It's a useful colour. It's the kind of colour I would choose, and it seems to be going on quite well. It is quite low in pigment even when fully mixed. It's not a really, really heavy, thick colour. I quite like that. It means that you can add multiple layers to thicken it. If you wanted a really dark, heavy green, you may wish there was a little bit more kick in there at times, but for what I'm using it for here, it works really well. So you can see here, I've got one of my Warhammer fantasy buildings, one of my old world buildings, and I'm just running it in between the tiles here, and again, it's the kind of effect that I've already added to the building to a certain extent, using even contrast paints, but this is good, and I can see uses for it, and I think I'll definitely be reaching for this pot in the future. The second pot is the rust, and this is really bright and vibrant. I tend to go for a darker rust colour, so this is the opposite end of what I already own, and I suppose that's pretty good actually, because it gives me something different. But it is a very, very bright oxidised rust, and so it really depends is how dull it dries at the end and how much it dulls down, which I expect it will do. And then the same here with the verdigris. It's quite a bright colour, but once you apply it in small areas, which is what you really need to do with verdigris, it does look fine as well. And I can see this being really useful on weapons and gold. I'm not really putting it over any gold here. I didn't have time to paint a miniature specifically for this, so I've actually grabbed existing miniatures that I knew wouldn't suffer from a little bit of extra weathering, and I thought that would be the best way to display it, even if I was slightly out of focus there, my apologies. But using it on these little metal sort of cross areas on the sides of the buildings, then it works quite well. Sometimes you add a little bit of verdigris to the tiles. I know that might necessarily be accurate in terms of the way verdigris is formed, but that kind of colouring, I'm just demonstrating how you might use it on a roof as well that's already quite turquoisey. You can mix it in, and I'm going back now just with second layers and seeing how much it darkens up, and they are subtle. All of them are quite subtle, even though the rust looks really bright and vibrant. They are quite, as I said, low on the pigment side of things, which gives you decent control. The grime is definitely my favourite, and I think I'll use it most, and I feel like you could use an all-over wash with it, and it would tilt and colour things quite nicely, which is pretty cool. So I'll definitely be turning to the grime colour for sure. The rust does dull down a little bit. It definitely works as that nice bright oxidated rust. I think what I would like to see from them in the future, and I know Jake will be watching, is that the range expands and there's a darker rust to go with it, maybe 2 more different colours of rust, because you really need different shades, and this would be great as part of a multiple set of different rusts. It works really well on the door here, better than it does on some of the other areas, because it is, as I said, quite bright. But using it in conjunction with a darker rust colour or adding a little bit of a wash over the top afterwards would be great as well. But it works. It works exactly like an oil wash should do, going into those recesses, and when it dries, it looks quite dry and it evaporates. It's pretty cool. And in the same sense, the verdigris is very, very similar. You don't want to use too much. You can actually thin these further and feather them out using a little bit of white spirit. And again, I'm not sure whether that's something that they are looking to add to their range. Most companies who sell oil paints will have their own branded pot of artist thinner as well. I'm not sure whether that's something they're looking at adding, but to sell it as part of a set is quite handy. Though, in fairness, I tend to buy my artist thinner all over the place. Sometimes I'm in Hobbycraft in the UK, I'll go and pick up some Sansador or something like that, so it's not necessarily needed. You can see playing around here, putting it over the stone just to see how well it adds to the colouring there, and actually works really well over the grey. And it just goes to show it's called verdigris, but you can use these oil washes in many different ways. And adding the green over the top again now, and it's a really nice effect on those stone, and it looks a lot better than it did before. So it just shows they work very well for weathering purposes. I now would like to see the range expanded in terms of colours, and lots more colours within those ranges, because they're pretty good and they work very well and very much like the existing ones I've already purchased from other companies. The sponging tool I've used before essentially is this little gripper that holds squares of sponge. And the white sponge they had before, and I really liked it. It's apparently like a makeup brush sponge, and it's much denser, and you can really build up nice textures with it. You can tear them and cut them into shape, and you'll have potentially seen me using this in videos quite a lot. In fact, a recent video painting Illyrian Reavers, building up the grey on a horse, actually on the horse fur or the horse flesh. And this foam is the kind of foam you find in normal packaging that wargamers have been sponging with for years. And again, you can cut it and shape it. It just means you're not holding it with your fingers or tweezers. Whether you need to buy that or not, I don't know. Some people will get a healthy supply free in their blisters. If you only buy Games Workshop stuff, you won't get that these days because they don't put it in their blisters. But essentially, you dip it in the paint, take most of it off, and then sponge it on. So this is the thicker one first. I'm not doing too much, just adding a little bit of rust, maybe where the paint has worn away, directly underneath this tank here for my guard army. And it works fine. I mean, I know how these work. I use this tool quite a lot, and it's relatively inexpensive. And if you're able to pick one up, I'd definitely recommend it. And then the standard old sponge is very much like the sponging that's been around for a long time, but they've just, I think, made their set more complete now by offering what's most used, I suppose, with the standard kind of sponging, along with the more denser sponge. And I think it's really, really interesting. It'd be really cool to see more types. You get that kind of sponge that oil painters use, the natural sponge as well. Is that a set of that to be included in the future if they're listening? So you've got really different shapes and textures that you can produce with your sponging. But I think these are really simple tools. Yes, there are cheaper ways of doing things. Always, you can go and buy bulk makeup sponges. You can buy bulk sponge from your blisters and just hold them with tweezers. I get it, but they're nice things to have. And if you're like nice hobby tools and things to use that work well, then they're great, and they're not super expensive. Good little stocking fillers as well. If you your family want to buy you gifts and don't want to spend too much money, you can say, yeah, get me this set of weathering sponges. But it's dry quite nicely on these models. I think it looks good, and like I said, they work very much like the oils I already have, so they get a thumbs up there. So the weathering sponges are $3.99 for 50 of those little cubes, and the actual sponge holder is $2.99. I think you can get it as a set as well, and all the oil washes are $3.99. This is very competitive in the market in terms of the price for those things, so no issues there with cost. And then maybe there'll be sets of those in the future as well. At this point, they're not all live on the website, so I couldn't show you those when I showed you the website shots earlier. I think all going live on the 21st of February, which is probably before you're hearing this, because I'm just about to head off to a holiday and I won't have time to fully edit all of this, or this video will go out just after the launch of these new products. So you can probably go and check that link that's in the video description and find all of those things now anyway. But the prices look pretty good to me. They don't seem out of whack at all. They're pretty competitive in the market for other similar items.
Thank you very much for watching the video. Hopefully you found that useful one way or another. Knott's Hobbies are a really small startup in many ways hobby business in the UK, and I'm happy to support them. There is an affiliate link in the video description below. You can get a slight discount if you wanted to purchase any of the products you've seen, being that the dry brushes, which I mentioned but didn't review in this video. You can check that previous review, all of the sponging tool, or now these new oil washes. I don't get any money for that though. That's not the usual way affiliates work. You click the link and the person on YouTube gets a little kickback. That part is turned off at my request. Knott's Hobbies is such a small business. I don't want to be taking money, and I want to be able to give you free and open reviews of hobby products. So I don't want to be financially rewarded for selling them to you. So the whole point around that is just really to see how much traffic from these videos goes to Knott's Hobbies, so the owner Jake can kind of keep an eye on that. Really, I do get these products free to review. I did get some products before free to review, and a set which I gave away to my patrons as well. That's it. That's the only things I've got, and I just wanted to be open and honest about that, because it's slightly different to relationships you may have with some other companies. Some YouTubers have links when they get financial reward for it. That's not the case in this instance, and it's just really nice to support a small business within the hobby sphere. Obviously I get product to review from Warlord Games and from Games Workshop, which are much bigger companies, and this is the opposite end of the scale. Obviously I don't get money from either of those two companies either, but in terms of comparison with the size of the business, and I wanted to make that clear so you don't think that this is some kind of video as a sales process. Really, it's not. It's just sharing the products to give Knott's Hobbies a little bit of exposure, and for you guys watching it to think, yeah, that's a great product, I want to buy it, or no, that's not really for me. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think of them. What do you hope? What would you like to see them expand into? I'd love to see some more colours in that range of oil washes, and that would really make a difference to how much I use them in the future. So full ranges are really good, and hopefully if they're successful they can afford to invest in more of those things. And on those sponging tools and brushes, they're great value and they're just great, so do check them out. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.